The Rockstar Animatronics have always seemed a bit weird, right? Whether it be the strange design choices or the lack of screen time, they never really fit in anywhere. They seem like another loose end waiting to be solved, except they were never really given any significance in the first place other than Lefty. That was until now, because I believe that we may be able to track him down to a very specific point in time. So come with me, viewer, as we delve into what just might be the origins of the Rockstars. Firstly, let's go over what we know about the Rockstars themselves. They were introduced in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. At first, they just seemed like a redesign of the Core 4 plus Lefty, with newer, flashier designs. However, when you look a bit closer, small details really start to stand out. Why did Freddy have a purple hat and tie? It's reminiscent of Fredbear, but why? And why did each of the animatronics have 5 fingers? It's a trait we used to link with Springlock suits, but having 5 fingers doesn't necessarily mean it's a Springlock suit, just that Springlock suits have 5 fingers. Sorta an all squares or rectangles thing. Still, it seemed like an odd choice. Then there's Lefty, the oddball of the group. When the game released, we quickly found out that Lefty was a sort of puppet trap. In the Insanity ending, we even see blueprints on Lefty's head, shoulder, and arm, all serving in a way to capture and contain the puppet. With this in mind, many came to the conclusion that the Rockstars were created by Henry as one last hurrah for the final location. At the time, this was a pretty good line of reasoning. The only 2 we knew as creators for Fazbear were Henry Emily and William Afton. If William's been rotting in a Springlock suit for the last however long, it seems unlikely he made them. Plus, if Lefty was created specifically for capturing the puppet, which the blueprints do seem to indicate, it fits Henry's characterization well. For a while, this theory went untouched and pretty much universally accepted. That was until we got Help Wanted 2. Help Wanted 2 had some massive lore mysteries, but one often overlooked is Carney, who really looks like a rock star. I mean, when we first got a good look at him, some even theorized that he was Lefty. In retrospect, we know that's probably not the case, but it raises an even bigger question. Why does Carney exist all the way back in, 1983 at the latest? That is the year of the last Fall Fest that we know about, and if we assume that Pizzeria Simulator takes place in 2023, that's a big ol' 40-year gap between animatronics that share almost identical designs. Sure, it's not weird for Fnaf characters to echo past designs, but this didn't seem like that. Carney doesn't feel inspired by the Rockstars, he pretty much is one, just without the star branding. It seemed important, but with how little evidence for anything we had, we couldn't really try to solve anything using Carney. And for a while, that's where things ended. Carney was just another weird loose end. Interesting, but with nothing solid to back it up. And all we could do was wait. When we finally started getting promotional material for Secret of the Mimic, one of the first teasers was this. It's a silly little costume commission sheet for Murray's Costume Manor. It was actually a pretty cool idea. Fans could fill it out and make it seem like a real commission sheet. Of the many filled out forms, Steelwool retweeted exactly one. One posted by @HeroSpiritVRC, describing the details of the Rockstar Animatronics. Now, was this a masterfully subtle lore drop meant to foreshadow today's theory? No. But what it did do was jog my memory. It reminded me of a certain forgotten animatronic and planted a little thought in my head. Something along the lines of, wouldn't it be crazy if, Edwin made the Rockstars or something? That would be so stupid. Fast forward a few months and we got Secret of the Mimic. Everything seems as expected. That is, until I get to some carnival games that seem oddly familiar. You see, if it was just another ball throw minigame, I could understand. After all, modern Fnaf isn't known for its innovative gameplay. However, this minigame seemed way too similar to the ones in Help Wanted 2. From the heckling animatronic on your right to the scoreboard on the left, even the design of the booth itself was reminiscent of the one in Help Wanted 2. The only thing that was missing was some Fazbear theming, and you've got yourself a Fazzer Blast booth. And that's when I remembered that these were showroom games, designed to show off to potential clients. And that is when everything started to click. Let's say I was already an established client of Murray's Costume Manor. Maybe I've ordered a suit or two before, but now I want something bigger. A full carnival booth for the Fall Fest, with our branding front and center and an all-new animatronic to match. Do you see where I'm going with this? We know Fazbear and MCM had ties to the annual Fall Fest. We also know Fazbear runs booths at these kinds of events, Fazcade being the big example, and those booths just happen to look and play almost identically to the ones we see built by the Murrays. And suddenly, Carney doesn't feel so random anymore. He feels like exactly what you'd expect from that partnership, a Murray-designed carnival animatronic tailored to Fazbear's brand. If Edwin designed Carney, then he almost certainly designed the Rockstars too, given their many similarities, and that's weird. But it actually explains a lot about why the Rockstars look the way that they do. Take Rockstar Freddy for example. His purple hat and tie. That wouldn't be a random design choice, it would line up perfectly with what the current Fazbear mascot looked like at that time. Fredbear with his iconic purple accents. And the 5-fingered hands? They don't mean that the Rockstars were Springlock suits. Instead, they were designed that way to mimic the Fazbear mascots of that era, who still carried those 5-fingered proportions. And if you really want to stretch things, you could even compare the design of the Rockstars to the animatronics that we know were designed by Edwin and Fiona. So the Rockstars aren't some strange last-minute intervention by Henry and Pizza Sim. They were actually all the way back from the 70s from the MCM. And it's not just Carney or the Rockstars. Throughout Secret of the Mimic, we find traces of other designs that won't chronologically show up again until Pizzeria Simulator. The sponsors? Already there. Blueprints for the mediocre melodies are mentioned in passing. Same with Music Man, Candy Cadet, and even Trash in the Gang. All of them exist in some form within the MCM, decades before they're ever reused, recovered, or remade for Pizza Sim. So when you take a step back, it feels less like a coincidence and more like a setup. Secret of the Mimic is deliberately, albeit retroactively, planting the groundwork for the entire cast of Pizza Sim. And if that's true, then the Rockstars being Murray creations suddenly makes a lot more sense. Now, I hear you. There are a few big problems with this theory, so let's address the elephant in the room. Or, more accurately, the midnight metal monster made to muzzle the marionette, Lefty. On the surface, those blueprints from the Fnaf 6 Insanity ending look like a direct counter to this theory. But here's the thing, it's not about what the blueprints show us, it's about what they don't. The only pieces that we see are specifically for puppet containment, which means it's entirely possible Henry didn't build Lefty from scratch. He could have taken a pre-existing design and altered it into what I like to call the pitch black puppet prison posing as a pizzeria performer. I almost had it. In other words, those blueprints don't really disprove the theory. They might actually fit perfectly with it, because the only parts that we know were designed by Henry are those that mattered for his plan. This interpretation allows the Rockstars to be created by someone else while still keeping Henry's arc intact. The second main issue comes from the unreliability of the Help Wanted games. As you probably know, they're both in-universe simulations. Help Wanted 1 is framed as a game, and Help Wanted 2 as a training program. On the surface, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really muddies the water on what we can and can't trust from these games. For instance, in Help Wanted 2, we crawl through below a gallery and sneak into parts and service. That's clearly a retelling of real events from Sister Location, just adjusted for gameplay. But in that same game, we also get something like Cinder Carousel, where you're fighting off Jacko Moon inside of a burning carousel. It's more of a mashup of ideas, a vibe piece than direct history. So the question becomes, where does Fazcade fit on the spectrum? Is it closer to Ballora Gallery, a retelling of real events dressed up for gameplay? Or is it closer to Cinder Carousel, a hodgepodge of references meant to give us a general sense of things without being literal? Because clearly, Fazcade isn't a one-to-one retelling of real events. It pulls elements from Fnaf 1 and 2, as well as designs from Security Breach. If we can't fully trust what happens inside the booth, can we trust what happens outside of it? Personally, I think so. But I could understand people disagreeing. While I do think it would be weird to arbitrarily give Carney a Rockstar design of all things, I don't think it's out of the question. If Carney turns out to be a VR-only animatronic, why give him a Rockstar design unless they're trying to signal us to look back at the Rockstars for the modern story? Just like Sun, Moon, and Eclipse hint towards future storylines in Secret of the Mimic, maybe Carney's role is to do the same, foreshadowing what's to come by pointing us toward the past. So where does that leave us? Well, for the lore as it currently stands, not much. The Rockstars being created in the past is a cool twist, but it doesn't change how we view the story as a whole. What it does help us do is set up expectations for the eventual sequel to Ruin. You see, the Rockstars have been mysteriously absent from the Fnaf 6 pizzeria. This is odd because we know they were there at some point. Based on the art on the walls and the type of stage, Michael most certainly had the rock stars in the pizzeria, so where are they now? In the books. Their endos get taken off by a cleanup crew after the fire, but the books aren't nearly as solid as they used to be when it comes to canon. So why the silence? Why no rock stars in Ruin or Help Wanted 2? Was it just an oversight, or are they being saved for something? Maybe there's something waiting down there, in that abyss we keep hearing about. Listen, I'm not saying we will see them in the next game. What I am saying is that if we see the Mimic in a Rockstar Freddy suit, I'm gonna scream. That pretty much wraps it up, but I am curious to know what you guys think of this idea. I know some theories tend to hone in on specific details and run a bit too far with them, and maybe this is one of these situations, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Still, please let me know what you guys think in the comment sections below, and subscribe while you're down there. I know this is a bit shorter than the usual video, but fear not. I have another coming out later this month, and like vague dates on screen now for like future videos this year. I know it's been a while since I last uploaded, and that's because I've been busy with important stuff. That said, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.